Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Peacemaker Aftershow here on the Hollywood Critics Association YouTube channel. We are so excited. We are almost at the end here. We're getting into territory where we haven't gotten screeners for, so none of us know what's happening next. So we're super excited to talk about it and give you our predictions and talk about episode 7. This is called Stop Dragging My Heart Around. I tell you, all of these titles have been the best. But before we dive into it, my name is Tessa Smith. You guys can find me everywhere online at mamasgeeky.com, Mama's Geeky on Instagram, Twitter, here on YouTube. I've got my reactions up to the episodes, so if you check that out on my YouTube channel. And James, why don't you let everyone know where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Jam White on Twitter, at Jammer White on Instagram, Jay Writes on Substack, where I write a weekly review column and whatever else comes into my crazy little head. And also, usually you can find me on empireonline.com, where I write a lot of news, the occasional feature, the odd interview, those sorts of stuff. That's my big day job.
Awesome. And how about you, KB?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at the Lady KB, TheLadyKayb, and there you can find my link tree, which has just the links to all the work that I do since I'm freelance. So I work with a lot of different outlets: The Beat, Nerdophiles, Complex, Nerdist, Collider, and a few others. And you can also follow my YouTube channel through the lens of Lady KB, and I also post interviews and 5-minute film reviews and other stuff there.
Awesome. Well, listen, this episode started off pretty intense. We finally get the full details of what happened with Peacemaker's brother. We get the full thing, and just another moment of just how horrible his father is, just how absolutely awful his dad is. James, how did you feel about that flashback sequence and finally getting the full picture?
It's something I think we maybe kind of guessed from the clues that we've been given all the way through. You do see a little earlier flashback in way back in around 1 or 2, something like that, of this stuff. But yeah, it's absolutely incredibly emotional. It's incredibly tragic, and it also sets up stuff for later in the episode, which again is a great James Gunn touch of that. What happens here, how his dad reacts to it, how he reacts to it, absolutely gets paid off down the line in within about half an hour of their conflict later on, which we'll get into. But yeah, it's a really tragic little thing. It's lovely to see how bonded the brothers were, the fact that they were really good friends, even though their dad was an incredible, terrible asshole, and just to see what happened with the older brother, with his bro, was tragic. It's incredibly painful for a child to go through that, and for the parent to respond the way they did. So it's really emotional, and just another wonderful little touch in building Peacemaker's psyche, building who Christopher Smith grows up to be.
Yeah, it was definitely, it's heartbreaking, like you said, and you can see on John Cena's face how much he's still affected by it. And of course, like you said, that comes into it later on in the episode. But KB, how did you feel about finally getting this full picture?
Yeah, I'm glad that we got the full picture. I do like that they kind of tried to build it, making it kind of seem like the brothers had a bond and camaraderie like against the dad. So it's interesting because when we do see later on in the episode, how he's naming the reasons why he hates Christopher so much. And literally all of the things that he's naming are things that he learned from his brother. So it's so interesting because it's like, you hate him so much, but like a lot of the goodness and the fun, that you can attribute to Chris and to Peacemaker really came from his brother, and like things that he was just learning, and them just being kids trying to figure it out, under literally the thumb and reign of a terror as a father. So it's so good to finally, kind of connect the dots, but it is very difficult to watch. I mean, the guilt is really eating him alive. And obviously for something like this to happen to a child within a certain age range, there is a lot of guilt that you associate with yourself. And I'm glad that he's finally letting go of that guilt and realizing that, like, this wasn't his fault at all. This was his father's fault. Like, creating a fight ring between your two kids, how do you think this is going to end? Like, I'm confused. Like, when you create this ring amongst children, and they're just, trying to win their father's affection, ultimately, like, yeah, we'll do it. We're trying to win his affection. And, it's unfortunate what happened to his brother, but this is totally on you, sir, in creating this ridiculous scenario for your sons to be in to begin with. Like,
yeah. And the fact that, like, he didn't get it at first, he's like, he's doing the worm. Like, that was so sad when he said that line. I was like, oh, like,
he just doesn't know.
Because he's a kid. Like you forced your children to do. Like, as a mom of 2 kids, I can't even imagine pitting them against each other like that. I hate when they fight like verbally. I wouldn't be like, hey, beat each other up and let's earn money off of this. Like, what? It's just another thing that proves just how horrible this man is, his dad is. So but in true James Gunn fashion, he gives us this heartbreaking moment, and then he's like, let's make things hilarious after the intro, which I never skipped, not once. I love that intro. We get the whole diary creating collages conversation. Vigilante's talking about what collages he would create, and that he would read Peacemaker's poetry. And one of the things I love too is how he kind of was like, I didn't think at first, I would never have pegged you for a diary guy, but having gotten to know you, I totally could see it happening. Just love that conversation that ends with them going off to kill the cow themselves because screw everybody else. James, how did you feel about that whole just hilarious conversation?
It was great. It was absolutely in keeping with what we've come to expect from the dynamic between Vigilante and Peacemaker and now Economos. Everything about it. It's just and Peacemaker absolutely being outraged that anyone would think that diary that was planted that someone else created would be the thing he would do. He'd be like, it'd be a journal. It'd be awesome. And I love that little moment. It's like he's still trying to defend himself, even though it's absolutely outrageous that anyone would think he'd make that kind of diary, and that's what he's focusing on. He's not focusing on I was set up by somebody. This is a huge problem for me because now the police are trying to hunt me. I'm a wanted man. No, it's his wounded pride again. Even when he's just been flashing back to really tragic stuff, his wounded pride just comes rising up again because that's almost his defense mechanism. He needs to assure himself more than anyone else that no, he's this guy and he wouldn't do this, he would do that. And then you've got the whole idea of Vigilante saying, I'd collage a picture of all of us having sex with chicks. Well, was it dolphins?
Dolphins watch.
Dolphins.
Taking bong hits or something like that. Yeah. And he's like, and the Economist is like, I don't want dolphins to watch me having sex. It's just like, it's just, again, just pure James Gunn. Just absolutely undercutting a really wonderful, serious, emotional moment, and then with subverting it right next scene with just this really great dynamic, this comedy dynamic between these 3 guys. It's fantastic.
It's so great. I love the 3 of them so much. And then, of course, you get a little bit of Eagley walking out the door to go join them, of course, because you need Eagley with you if you're going to go kill a cow that nobody knows what it looks like or where it is. But, KB, how did you feel about that whole conversation around the diary and the journal?
Oh yeah, I thought it was hilarious. I mean, I feel like the most hilarious portion is just how offended Peacemaker truly is. Like, I would never have these things in my journal. Like, why? Like, I can't believe that you would even think that I would do that. So it's so funny because he's like deeply hurt and everyone else is kind of making light of it. Like, well, the diary is this. And he's like, no, I have integrity. And, like, I would never put that stuff in here. So it's so interesting, like the duality of it, but it's so funny. And of course, Vigilante always shines when he gets to say the most random one-liners. And I feel like, that whole bit about having sex with the dolphins honestly was probably like not scripted because I just feel like it is some of the most random things put together, and he probably honestly just said them off the top of his head and they're like, okay, cut.
Yeah, I know James Gunn has said that he'll just start yelling things out to them while they're filming. And I've actually I was on the set of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 and I saw him doing that. Like, he'll just be like, okay, try it this way. And it's like the brilliant stuff that goes on in that man's head. Because it feels like improv, it feels like who would come up with that and actually write it down on a page. But apparently James Gunn, although who knows, that line definitely could have been improvised as well. I feel like he definitely gets in the skin of Vigilante when creating those lines, though. So it's great. But like we touched on before about the diary, everyone pretty much knows he was set up. Like, they're already aware of this. And then the very next scene is Harcourt confronting Leota about, like, you did it, didn't you? She shows up, hey, you planted this diary. So it just goes to show that, like, he's the only one who's in his head, like, I have to defend this thing. And everybody else is like, well, we really kind of know it wasn't you already. And then, of course, it comes out to Harcourt that Amanda Waller is Leota's mother. Mern bursts in. And, of course, Harcourt's like, hey, I'm going to tell on you, did you know Amanda Waller's a mom? And he's like, yeah, of course. I did research before I brought her on the team. So James, how did you feel about that whole scene with Harcourt and Leota and then Mern as well?
I thought it was really good. I liked that it, in some ways, it deepened. It ends up deepening the connection between Leota and Harcourt. It really does. I mean, Leota's like clearly like, I want to be out of this. I'm not built for this. I don't want to do this. And then Harcourt's like, I know you did this. This is your thing. But they really have that heart to heart about how Leota feels pressure from Waller to come and do this stuff. She was working in a dog shelter. She was running a dog shelter before she did this. And I know she said before, a few episodes ago, she said that she took the secret, the operative test or whatever, that the secret mission test and everything, and it was only a lower level and everything like that, but still you feel that pressure from her mother. It's just a lovely twin of the scene with Peacemaker and his dad earlier on. It's like that parent pressure coming out again, that parental pressure to do something, while basically taking advantage of her daughter in a moment of need to pressure into coming into this crazy world that Waller is just naturally swims in and Leota just hates. And it was great, the interaction between the two women. It didn't just naturally turn into, oh, I hate you and I hate you. It was deeper than that. It was emotionally resonant. And it was great because it wasn't just a basic turnaround. Oh, here's a twist. Mern knows. The only thing that got to me a tiny bit was Mern saying, oh yeah, I knew all about the Amanda Waller connection. And I kind of see why he might not share it with Harcourt, but I would have thought he might have shared it with Harcourt, but said like, look, don't make a thing of it. We'll keep an eye on her. We'll do it. I wonder why he never actually shared it with her. But then he's a butterfly. He's been a butterfly all along. So maybe he just doesn't trust any of them enough to not completely fall apart and have this whole team fall apart, which would endanger his own mission anyway. So, but let's face it, this team's on the verge of falling apart any second. So,
that team has been in trouble from the very start. But you're right. It does feel a little weird that he wouldn't. Because Harcourt, especially after Harcourt found out he was a butterfly, that feels like maybe when they would have had that conversation and he would have admitted about Leota's mom. But at the same time, Harcourt clearly hates Amanda Waller and is constantly saying, what are you, Amanda Waller? Or we're not Amanda Waller. And so maybe that's kind of where that comes from, in him not wanting to reveal it, knowing how much they have this hatred for her. KB, how did you feel about that whole conversation?
I will say this, like, I kind of feel like, to me, it wasn't misplaced for Mern not to tell Harcourt, and only because I think the butterflies don't have, like, what we're seeing in the butterflies when they inhabit the human body is that they don't have the same, like, level of emotional intelligence and a level of, like, I just don't think it crossed his mind, if I'm being honest. Like, he was probably like, I have this information, and then that's it. They're very, like, they're very just kind of regimented and kind of like, oh, I have this, I'll do this. Oh, I'll do this, I'll do this. It's not like a lot of extra thought behind it, it feels like, oftentimes, and particularly when we see them, kind of just doing what they're doing. It's like, okay, well, I'm just doing this, and that it is what it is. So I don't necessarily, that wasn't like a huge red flag for me. But I do appreciate kind of the closeness that Harcourt and Leota have now. I mean, like, let's truly talk about, non-transferable skills. Girl, you work at a dog shelter. You're going to be an operative? Like, there's really nothing that you can bring from that job to this one in any capacity. And so I think, like, Harcourt, when she finds out, like, you used to work at a dog shelter, then starts to make sense to her, like, girl, this is why you can't do a single thing, like, why everything impacts you, why you're so emotional about every decision. Like, I think she just finds some empathy. And I think too, like, when she finds out Waller's her mom, I think Harcourt's natural reaction is to be upset because obviously, like, she doesn't like Waller and the way Waller does business. But then I think her secondary knee-jerk reaction is empathy, because, like, she's like, oh, not like, this is your parent, like, okay, that's kind of actually terrible. Like, I think at first it's like, here's this anger, but then it's like, oh, if I had to be Amanda Waller's kid, like, how would I turn out too? So I do still love, like, the parallels between, parent and children, specifically between Leota and Christopher, but they haven't had that conversation yet. And so I, as we get into predictions for the finale, I do hope that there is a moment, because he doesn't know. He at this point is the only one, I assume, because I assume Economist knows as well. He's really the only one who doesn't know that Waller is her mom. And I think once they have that conversation, it'll change their dynamic for sure.
Yeah, I think so too. And then especially, like, we talk about this beginning of Harcourt and Leota talking, there's a little bit later on, which we'll get into. They have another conversation, kind of finish this conversation, I guess, when they have a chance to. And I really, really love that moment between them. They have some great moments in this episode. Again, James Gunn with being so good at giving every single character their moment. And speaking of every single character getting their moment, we get another Judo Master eating Cheetos. And then the guys at the mini mart just making fun of him. And I'm sitting here watching them going, oh, you guys are going to regret that. He's going to come at you. And what does he do? He does. And that's one of the best scenes that we get. But I just love that he's found himself some Cheetos again, right? He's got this obsession with Cheetos. What do you think about Judo Master and his snacks, James?
It's a great little character touch. It's just the fact that he's absolutely obsessed with these snacks. You always see him eating them, and then whenever someone insults him when he's eating them, you just know there's going to be a problem. The two little grace notes I absolutely loved were the fact that when he smashes the guy's head into the car window. I mean, not that I love that. Violence isn't great. Kids don't do violence. But and then when he's going to get into the car, he's having to sweep off the glass from the car seat, and he only does a couple of sweeps. You think, like, wouldn't you still? I know you got your costume on, but wouldn't that still be kind of dangerous? I'm like, just come on, man, just sweep a bit more. And the other thing was after the confrontation with the guys, after he beats them up, he just looks through the window of the convenience store, and the guy just gives him this big thumbs up. And he's just like, yeah, we all kind of root for Judo Master in that moment because those guys were being absolutely terrible to him. So they kind of got what they deserved. They literally unleashed the dragon, and there he was. And so yeah, it's not the dragon. We'll get to that in a minute. But I really enjoyed it. It was a random kind of comedy moment. There was something going through the back of my head going like, why are we catching up with Judo Master now? But obviously that is also then paid off in a couple of scenes later. But yeah, it's just fun. It was just like a pure fun little, Judo Master, you've been treated badly by everybody pretty much so far. You get your moment of like really getting back at people. So, and you deserve it as opposed to later.
Right. Well, true. Yeah. No, those guys definitely deserved it. And I did love that. I forgot about the thumbs up. That was so great. It's so funny. KB, what did you think about this whole Judo Master scene?
Yeah, I agree with James. They kind of got what they deserved. I mean, I will never understand the need to like pick on someone you don't know, like randomly. Like he's minding his business. He's in this suit. He's eating his snacks. Like, I guess I'm just kind of like, why would you even bother him? Like, just say hello, go into the store, get what you need, and leave. Like, it just didn't even have to be that. And now look, they're dead. So it's kind of like, I mean, you never know who you're messing with. And particularly in this time, like, we live, or they live rather, kind of in a world where superheroes do exist. So you technically don't know what kind of powers this person has. So why would you set them off? And then it's just like, well, here we go. Judo Master's like, yeah, and I'm going to steal your car because, well, you're dead. And so there's nothing else for you to do anyway. So it is interesting that like the cashier was like, oh, yeah. I mean, it's funny that he's like, good job. And I'm like, he didn't actually hear any of that conversation. So I'm confused about why. Like maybe they came in the store and they were rude to him. I don't know. But I was like, he didn't hear your conversation outside. So why are you giving him the thumbs up for like committing a crime on your property? I'm not sure, but like when the police come and there are these two bodies out here, who do you think they're going to talk to? Like was kind of my thought. Like, okay. But...
Well, it's funny you say that because they are in a world where they know there's superheroes and people with powers and abilities. This guy's clearly wearing a costume, so why would you even try to poke? Like he's obviously at least thinks he's a superhero if he isn't one. So like maybe back off. I don't know. These guys are clearly just jerks and totally got what they deserved. But speaking of costumes and superheroes in action, supervillains in action, I should say, White Dragon, man, seeing him in that costume and like flying through the air and just coming and whacking into the truck and just he like, what does he stick his hand through the thing, starts ripping at the truck to break in and start this fight against it's just Peacemaker, Vigilante, and Economos at that time. That whole scene, and then you've got his little like minions out there. I don't know. I was like, oh, we're going right into the action here. There was some really cool stuff there. James, what did you think about that scene?
Yeah, I just wrote in big letters, racist Iron Man, because that's the vibe that White Dragon gave me. It was just like white supremacy Iron Man with just, because his sort of like his cuff, like energy bolts and everything, and the way he's using them to fly at the same time kind of put me in mind of Iron Man. It's like James Gunn's kind of almost a little riff on Iron Man. What if Iron Man was a massive racist? And it's kind of, but it's great because the action is really well done at the same time. It's just the when him blasting the truck and doing all that stuff on a TV budget, it's really impressive. There's some really good stuff there. It looks really good. Like the effects work is really solid. And of course, you've got them all like tossing over in the van. They're sort of like turning over and over and over, and they're kind of injured. And of course, my first thought was, "Oh no, is Eagley going to be okay?" And Eagley's okay. So you're like, they make that clear quick. Eagley flies off immediately. So they're like, "Yeah, okay." Eagley's making the smart move. He's like, "Bye guys, I'm out of here. See ya. Gotta go. This is too much for me. I'm out." But yeah, it's a great confrontation. I love that Vigilante immediately like springs up and starts trying to engage with the White Dragon and trying to shoot him and trying to get rid of him, and then does the whole grenade thing, which is just a heroic, also kind of dumb. You kind of think like throw the grenade and then do the running thing.
Yeah.
Boom, and you don't want to be in the blast radius. But the only thing I thought about in Vigilante's defense was maybe he throws the grenade but doesn't run because he doesn't want the White Dragon to realize what's happening, and he might try and like fly off and anything like that. He wants him to be impacted. So, but mostly I chalked it up to Vigilante just being kind of a dum-dum. Yeah. So Anacondamus goes, and then of course you get the revelation that the helmets are being traced and tracked. And so they put it on a raccoon, which feels like absolutely the best Guardians of the Galaxy callback you could have, because you know how James Gunn loves raccoons, and here's a little CGI raccoon that they can use to try and throw the racists off the scent. So all in all, just a great action scene, even beyond the next bit that happens, and I'll wait and talk about that in my 3-part TED talk. I'll let you guys discuss this bit to begin with.
Oh, we can't wait, James. You're right, although I immediately thought about Rocket Raccoon. I was immediately like, yes, like this is a Guardians tie back. Like that was the perfect thing, because he could have put the helmet anywhere on anything, but of course it was going to be a raccoon. And I love how they're like, he's really fast, like when they're looking at the tracker. Like it's just it was so great. That whole scene is just fantastic. And you're right, I think Vigilante, I think he's just stupid. I think he just was like, hey, I'm gonna throw this grenade and then stand here. That feels like a Vigilante thing to do. KB, how did you feel about this whole scene?
Poor Vigilante, like he is quite dumb. Like I hate to say that, but it's true. Like you're just like, oh, poor thing. Like truly bless his heart. Every single time he does something, I'm like, this is not smart, and you probably shouldn't do it. But he's just like, I'm gonna go for it. Why not? I immediately thought of Iron Man, so I'm so glad that you said that, James, because I was like, oh, this is very Iron Man-esque for White Dragon, aka White Rabbit, as I would call it, because I will say this: the White Rabbit minions, his followers, are very like they are not smart either. So when they were like, oh, he's so fast, I was like, duh, because he doesn't have the helmet on. Like why? Like why? Why would you think he's actually this fast? Like you can't possibly think it's true. And then when one of them left the keys in the car, and he was like, "Did you leave your keys in the car?" He was like, "I was rushing. It's like, who are these people that want their teams? Because none of them are like quite. They just lack not like just
common sense.
Yes, that's what it is. They lack common sense and just kind of like general knowledge, where you're just like, hey, probably don't leave your keys in the car. Maybe don't do that. Like, they're like, whatever. So I think the scene was great because it was hilarious. But, look, I think it was all just for the tension and the buildup, right, between, him and his dad, because we knew that this was coming. And, his goal is to kill his son. But, ultimately, Peacemaker is like, no, I have the last word. But I do think we needed the scene for them to just be able to talk it out, be able to really get some things off their chests. Specifically Christopher, because he needs to tell him, he needs to release kind of this guilt. And I think in order to fully release the guilt, he just has to have the conversation with his dad, and he has to put the onus back on him because it belongs there to begin with.
Definitely when they the tension comes to an end, I guess I'll say, between the two of them, which happens in a little bit, which we'll get to, is things got intense. And I will say I was completely surprised that something happened in this episode that happened in this episode. I thought maybe it would be saved for a future one. We'll get into all that. But I was really like, one of my favorite moments, heartbreaking moments, honestly, is when this Sophie Goff, whatever you want to call her, busts in and confronts Mern about, how do you know about the cow? oh, this is who you are, whatever your name was. I can't pronounce it. And then just like kills him, like squashes poor Mern Butterfly. I was so sad because I was getting to like Mern a lot, even though he's like kind of awkward. And I mean, because he's a butterfly, we figured out why he's so weird now. I was really, really sad. I couldn't believe just squished him. And then we get to see him a little later and he's all, oh, it was very, very sad. James, how did you feel about that whole moment?
I was always kind of intrigued by that because I started to think like, it's clear that the butterflies don't necessarily naturally recognize each other in human beings, because the way she killed him at first, she didn't realize he was a butterfly. She didn't realize he was this great, like, you know, he was the one who stood against them in their big plan to try and take over the planet. She just shot him like he would be a human. And then like her partner or someone else had to point out, oh, look, here's the butterfly trying to get out and tries to escape, squish. The thing I did really like about the scene though was just the next scene when Harcourt and Leota show up and you see the poor like crushed Mern butterfly sing that, and it felt like almost not a spoof, but kind of an homage to those scenes where, like, you know, someone has a death scene, like they've done it in Deadpool recently, where he's like, I'm not quite dead yet. And and he's kind of like, he touches her hand, like with his little thing. And then he sort of just leans back and kind of, if the butterfly at that point could speak English, you could probably imagine him being like, it's so cold. I can see the light. You know, it's that kind of thing. It felt like a really good take on that. I loved it. It was emotional too. I was like, oh no, the poor guy. I felt bad for him, but at the same time, I was like, hee. Kind of feels like a fun like take on that movie death, that cliche movie trope death that you see. It's just like, it's just like a really great version of that. But yeah, I'm really sad. I'm sorry to lose Mern. I'm kind of sorry he won't be in the finale. But I like that it was a real statement of emotional stakes and upping the stakes and saying like nobody is safe. If someone is as normally prepared and together, even being a butterfly as Mern can just be killed right there, nobody's safe. You don't know what to expect going forward. So yeah, I really liked it. I think it's really well done on several levels, which is just the classic James Gunn thing.
Yeah.
Can I just say,
killing
can I say James's special effects this episode are killing me. your sound effects.
Oh boy, that's true. None of us can top you. You're fit. You should be doing the sound for the episodes. That would be. That would be fantastic.
Call me. Yeah. I'm available. I'm really available. Just let me know.
But it was sad to see him go, because again, I really was kind of hoping to have him in the finale, but again, in true James Gunn fashion, never get attached. He does not mind killing people. Doesn't faze him at all. KB, what did you think about Mern's goodbye?
I have to agree with James in the sense that I felt like I'm really glad that the butterfly version of Mern didn't die immediately, because it did really feel like when Harcourt picks, butterfly Mern up and kind of stares into his eyes or its eyes, and it's almost like a passing of the baton, like I'm not gonna make it, so this is it. I'm just kind of glad that we got a goodbye, so to speak. You know what I mean? It sucks because I too, like you, Tessa, was really hoping to see kind of what he could bring to the finale, but I am glad that they at least had a moment to say goodbye, because they had been working so closely with Mern, and realizing that Mern was the only butterfly of pure heart. I mean, I guess that's the best way to put it. He was the only, one that truly was okay, we probably shouldn't be doing these grotesque and terrible things to the humans of this planet. Let's try a different approach. And so since he's the only one that had a heart, I think he deserved, kind of the courageous goodbye. But I am very sad. And now it just makes me even more curious to kind of see how the team will survive without him.
Yeah. And again, in true James Gunn fashion, they're like, here's this horrible moment with this guy dying. It's so emotional. And then Judo Master is going to bust in and start a big crazy fight with everybody. And I don't know, that whole scene is just, I'm like, this is fantastic. He can't let you have a moment to where you're almost teary and crying. He's like, and now we're going to give you this crazy thing. Go, this is awesome fight. The toilets are being smashed. People are just getting absolutely crazy in this apartment. James, how did you feel about this next action scene?
I have to admit, I suppose I should have figured it, but I was almost surprised that Judo Master came back to get revenge, because I feel like dude, you're free. Just go off and like find some other dude to work for, or go and do your own master plan, or do something else. But I could absolutely see why he might be feeling vengeful towards the team and might want to take his revenge. And it just so happened that Harcourt and Leota were there, so they're the ones that he's going to attack. But the fight with Harcourt was fantastic. I thought the stunt work was really outstanding. I mean, I felt like, Amelia, I felt like Jennifer Holland really threw herself literally at some places into the fight. Now, obviously, there were stunt doubles in places. There's stuff like that. You can't be throwing poor Jen Holland around everywhere and like smashing her into toilets. But I felt it was really effectively done. It didn't feel like they were switching out like stunt doubles all the time, and it felt brutal and it felt inventive. I felt kudos to whoever came up, like the fight coordinator who came up with it, because it was really effective. There was so much use of, like you were saying, Tessa, like use of the toilet and use of the props, and she was holding her own against him, even though he's a really skilled fighter. And it took Leota to basically like take him out, or at least neutralize him with the taser and everything. So yeah, I really like the fight, because it didn't. You kind of had the comedy value of him like taking out the bros earlier in the episode, but this really truly makes you realize he is a threat when he wants to be, because he is not messing around. But then neither is Harcourt, and she can hold her own. I thought it was great. I thought it was really impressive. It was like just another impressive action beat in this episode, which is frankly full of them. So
yeah, definitely. It was more like a serious action scene as opposed to like outside the mini mart, which was just hilarious. And I mean, I've said it before, but I'm loving Jennifer in this
fight scene. I thought it was great. My only apprehension is this, like, obviously we see Leota use the taser to kind of take him down, but like tasers don't kill people. And I'm also kind of like, we did this whole like full circle moment for Judo Master. So what does this really mean? I guess like I kind of walked away from the scene like, are we going to see more of Judo Master? Because I 100% don't think that he's dead, right? So I'm like, he's down, but like he's actually kind of like the hardest person on this show to kill, realistically. Like we've seen time and time again, he's like a cat, he has 9 lives. So I'm kind of like, what does this mean? Because I just feel like wholeheartedly, like they just do not have time. There's so much happening with the cow. Like they don't have time for outside threats, but Judo Master is still alive. And so, it's like, what happens now? So yeah, that's what I walked away from. Just I really was just kind of thinking, okay, what happens now? What are we going to see from him? But I thought it was an incredible fight sequence, for sure.
Yeah, I don't think he's down, but he's not out. I have a feeling he'll be back, and whether it's in the finale or a possible season 2, I know James Gunn has been teasing it a lot on Twitter, saying that it's not out. It's not out of the cards, so fingers crossed. I think the show's doing really well, so I think there will be a season 2. But now we get into the part where, I mean, I almost just want to say, James, go, run, talk. We have some hilarious Eagley stuff, right? I mean, trying to get him back in the car with a bag of chips. I don't know how do I find Eagle chips? But then there's the big fight. There's the confrontation between Peacemaker and White Dragon, and Eagley kind of takes one for the team here. James, why don't you just give your whole thoughts on this whole moment?
This is kind of James Gunn, like giving one hand, taking away with the other, because you've got Eagley basically being Eagley, taking I love the fact that Eagley just won't wait for anyone else to get in a car. He's just like, right, I'm gonna peck your butt, I'm gonna peck your butt, I'm gonna peck your butt, get in the car, I'm impatient, I'm an impatient eagle, I've got to do these things, I've got things. But I love the fact that you tie that with when you see him earlier in the episode when Christopher calls Eagley, and you see him walking. He's just like walking. So he's walking kind of slowly because he's supposed to be flying normally, but he's like walking. And I love that they left that beat open, just that little watching him walk. Just like, it was very cute. It was very silly. But yeah, you got the whole thing with the chips and everything, which we've established already. Because I think Peacemaker in episode 1 or 2, he says something about like, oh, if you crinkle some chips, you'll think you have chips, and he'll come in and do something like that. Loved all of that. Yeah, and then Eagley in action again. Eagley still hardcore. Eagley, essentially, by the way, if you Google Eagley hardcore, I wouldn't Google that. Don't Google that. It's not a good idea. But you've got Eagley springing to action to defend his friend. He's there. Yeah. He'll go in. There was some tiny part of me in the back of my mind that worried that all the time spent with Augie meant that Augie may have some like secret like code or something, or some signal that he gives, and Eagley might turn against them. But no, Eagley is true. Eagley's true friend, truly loyal to Peacemaker. He'll go into action. He'll fly into action. And he'll get hit. And oh my goodness, I was so worried for him, because you really do see him get hit hard. And then he's like off the corner of the road and he's just lying there and he's not moving. And I seem to remember it felt like a callback to, I remember the Walking Dead fans came up with the whole slogan, which was, "If Daryl dies, we riot." And that was going through my head, but just replaced Daryl with Eagley, because who needs Daryl? And so I was like, if Eagley dies, I riot. And I was seriously thinking about getting a riot together, but leafleting to start a riot is really hard. Kinko's was really expensive, and I could only get 3 people. We had to be socially distanced, and it really didn't work out well. So yeah, I was really worried about him. I thought, based on the Mern death, is he gonna kill Eagley? Will James Gunn kill Eagley? But the other part of my head was thinking, look, James Gunn loves animals. He really doesn't want to hurt animals or kill them in any real way, unless it's like Eagley. So apologies to the possum/skunk nation, but because Eagley, he'll let Eagley hunt whatever he wants and bring it. But I thought Eagley was going to be okay, but I was really, really, truly worried about Eagley, because I thought, if Mern can die, anyone is on the table. And what would it do to Peacemaker? It would just absolutely up the stakes for Peacemaker. But I'm not sure if Peacemaker needed the stakes upped when it comes to his father, because they have all of this baggage, which comes out in this incredible torrent and the incredible chat between the two of them. Like, and Augie just pressing his buttons, calling him names and saying like, "You won't do this. I control you, even if you're not like living under my roof," and everything like that. And then bang, it's like, no, you don't. You're done. Done, you horrible racist POS. So even if my brain was going, like horrible racism, parental treatment, mistreatment, hitting Eagley, but it's very close. It's very, very close. So.
Very close. I will say, I was surprised they killed Augie in this episode. Like, I thought it would maybe be saved for like the beginning of a finale, but at the same time, I think you do have to kind of deal with the butterfly threat in the end. So I get it. But I was happy to see that it was Peacemaker who did it. I was happy to see him pull the trigger. I was a little shocked. I do think maybe at this point he thought Eagley was dead, right? Or maybe very, very injured. So Eagley definitely, I think, pushed him over the top. And then I did love his realization of like, wait, you killed my brother. Like, that wasn't me. That was you. That whole conversation is great. KB, were you concerned for Eagley at all? And then how did you feel about Augie's dying?
I was more concerned for James. Like, I was like, if Eagley dies, I think James is out.
Yeah, there'd just be a black screen. It would be a black screen. You wouldn't just see me. I just wouldn't be here. So yeah, I'd just be in mourning.
Yeah, that's what I was mostly afraid of. It's interesting because we see Eagley bully Economos, literally bully him, and I was just like, wow. But to James's point, yeah, at one point I did think that Augie was calling him, and I was like, oh, here comes racist Eagley, like just. He said, listen, I'm back with Augie, and this is where I belong. But no, he was like, my loyalty lies to Christopher and Peacemaker, and I'm going to see it all the way through. So, of course, it was to his detriment. Of course, he was really sad. Christopher was obviously seeing, what happened to Eagley. And I think you're right, Tessa. I think that became the motivation for him to actually literally physically be able to pull the trigger. It's interesting because he hasn't had this. It's almost like ever since he got out of jail, he hasn't had that type of confidence because he doesn't want to kill. And it's interesting because in this moment, you can see him almost reconciling the two together. Like, he actually really doesn't want to, but he also knows how terrible of a person his father is, and not just to him. Like, I think it also is him realizing like he has to go because ultimately the damage that he does to almost everyone that comes across his path that is, essentially not a white male, for mostly for him, he hates them. So he's like, we need to just get rid of him. He was like, it has to be me. And I think pulling the trigger, kind of as difficult as it was for him and as sad as it was for him, I think gave him the closure and, kind of finality that he just needed. Like, he needed that to be able to move on and to lay down that guilt. So I too agree with you, Tessa. I actually didn't think, like, I thought that in the finale, I thought that we would see more conflict between him and his father, the cow, and maybe that's ambitious because, like, now that I'm thinking about it, it feels kind of ambitious for the last episode to tackle all those things. And so, maybe that's why they made the decision to go ahead and kill Augie in the penultimate episode. So, I knew he was going to die, or at least I hoped he was going to die because I truly dislike him so much. But I didn't think it would be now, per se.
And what you said made me think of going back to that episode where Peacemaker was talking about Batman and stuff and saying, no, he doesn't have all these villains. He has all these villains still running around because he doesn't have the balls to kill them, basically, right? Mm-hmm. And now it's on him. Everyone that these people kill, like Joker and Riddler and all that, now that's on Batman. And that kind of made me feel like that was maybe going through his head of like, okay, I have to kill Augie because or else it's on me. Everybody that he hurts in the future, it's kind of a nice callback to that. And then because, James Gunn doesn't let anything just sit, he throws in the whole Vigilante talking about his face exercises. Why are you doing your face exercises here? Like, Vigilante just truly doesn't get it. But I loved that line. I like how John had to be like, he's crying.
Why are you doing your face exercise? And he was like, you know what? You don't get a face that jacked without doing exercises all the time. Yeah. And I was just thinking, poor thing. Like, again, bless his heart. Bless
his heart. He really, truly thought, like, dude, Vigilante. But then we get to that heartfelt moment really with Leota and Harcourt and having this full conversation, which I really, really loved them diving into and her kind of being like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. This is why I was packing. I need to go. And Harcourt's like, even goes, well, it's kind of a shame because you're good at the job. And I was like, oh, that's so sweet. Like, but she's not, like, let's be honest. but thank you for saying that. I mean, I loved that moment between them. James, how did you feel about them having that conversation?
It was a great extension of what had been building throughout the series, but also just building on the earlier scene where it's revealed about Waller and it's revealed about everything else with the diary and all that kind of stuff. I just like that Harcourt is showing so much more emotional, not intelligence per se, but sort of emotional understanding of where Leota's coming from and realizing, she's trying to actually be supportive of her and saying like, look, and maybe part of it is, I don't think she's trying to manipulate her per se, but Harcourt knows they're in a really tough spot now because this is going to be the big final confrontation with the butterflies and she needs her team, which is basically it's her team now, as we'll find out shortly, but it's basically her team now that she's leading. She needs these people on her team. Even if Leota is not exactly cut out for it, she's right. She isn't cut out for it necessarily, but she has been helpful in some ways. She's done certain things. She's shot dead people. Who doesn't need that on your team? But it's a great scene because again, it's just that real sort of emotional shades of it. It's not just, oh, here's action. All of it is underpinned with his real emotional feeling and value to these characters, not just, oh, this person's wacky, this person does this, this person's an eagle. It's all absolutely underpinned with this great created characters that again, it's such a good thing from James Gunn, and he really has embraced the chance to do it over a longer format here. It's really effective.
Yeah, it's again, he knows what he's doing when it comes to ensemble casts. He gives you those connections between pretty much every single character has a connection with another character, and he gives you all that underlying, and he allows you to breathe with it. I think that's where it helps this being a series versus a movie. There's a lot more we can dive into. But KB, how did you feel about that conversation between the two of them?
Yeah, I agree with you, Tessa. Lovely compliment. However, definitely not true. And I love Leota. I do, but I just don't think that she has. I think she understands her strengths, which is why she's ready to go. And I just don't think that she has, kind of what it takes to cut out to do this line of work for this mission specifically. So I will say she has learned a lot of things that may be transferable to like an economist, like, behind the computer, maybe, in the office type work. But to be out in the field as an operative, I don't think it's really her strong suit. I appreciate the vote of confidence, but I also think, what was beautiful to see this entire episode, and actually one of my favorite parts, is the evolution of Harcourt, right? Like, I feel like this episode is very emotional for her. I think that, we see, and it started to happen a little bit at the end of the last episode when she tells Peacemaker, her government name, her actual name. It's interesting that you see her kind of drop the walls and the layers bit by bit, and you see more of that evolution with Leota this episode. And so I think what is great to see is her kind of understanding that like a true leader may have these, actual tactical skill sets, which she definitely has, but they also have to have the emotional capacity to lead as well. And I think we're starting to see her kind of dive more into that. So while Leota should definitely take a break, like, I definitely just don't think this is for you. I do think that like she is in a lot of ways bringing out the best in Harcourt, who is better suited for this line of work. Like I think that they're learning from each other what that looks like.
Yeah. And then we've got the scene at the vet where that basically all plays out, right? So, first of all, you've got the hilariousness of Vigilante just wanting to kill them because they saw them, even though they just helped save Eagley, which I'm sure James was thrilled about. And I know you have a lot to say about that. But then also Leota has a moment where she changes her mind on leaving. And it's a very another important Eagley moment. So, James, why don't you just discuss the whole vet scene and let us know how excited you were?
The vet scene again works on all these different levels because you've got that amazing scene of Chris basically praying over Eagley and wanting his best friend to be well and wanting him to be okay. And I have to give all credit to John Cena, who was probably just there in a room with, I don't know, a plush puppet, a blue sock. I don't know what it is that they were using. I haven't seen much of the behind the scenes footage of what they used to have something to stand in for the CGI Eagley that's put in later. But that whole scene of him just like weeping and praying and, his little thing about, I should never have left him with my dad. I should have left him with an ugly girl who there would be no attachment there. And I probably wouldn't even have sex with her. And he's like, well, maybe I would have done, but just one. I would have been out of prison. I would have had needs anyway. Just like, even in this deep emotional moment where he's effectively terrified for his best friend, the Peacemaker, just dumb, macho, all the stuff that is still part of him that will never ever completely go away just comes in. But he understands more about himself now, which is good. Obviously that came out in the scene with his dad, and he appreciates what he's done and what he is and what he needs to work on. But yeah, I love the scene and the fact that there's that lovely callback to Leota seeing him with Eagley and seeing the hug, and because she's like, Eagles don't hug people. I call bullshit on that. There was no hug. And she sees the hug and she's like, oh, and almost that's one of the reasons that makes her want to come back in and like rejoin the team, because she's like, oh, okay, now I see what's happening. But yeah, I loved it. But then also I have to admit, I really like the little turn from the vets. And the thing, not only have you got Vigilante saying like, we have to kill this, the whole male nurse conversation, which feels like something out of Meet the Parents, but you've also just got the fact that when they all decide to be a team, you turn the camera pans around and it's the vet, and one of the nurses has got a gun, and she's like, okay, we'll go with you. Like, no, you people will die. But it's like a great touch. It's like a perfect extra little, like a hat on a hat, like a comedy beat on top of a comedy beat. I really love that moment too. So yeah. Oh, and just before I finish on that scene, Vigilante and the tape. Yes. So he's concerned about the tape being bad on their skin, but ruthlessly murdering them, yeah, it's fine.
And he's like, yeah, like he didn't think there's a problem with that. He's like, exactly. That's exactly my concern. Yeah. I love the whole vet scene for just so many reasons, because it's just, it feels like a good segue into what's coming up next. You've had all this action going on, all these intense things, and then again, Leota, she calls her wife and literally is like, I just saw an eagle hug a man. Like, what is happening? KB, how did you feel about the whole vet scene?
Listen, I feel bad for Eagley because, we're like, will he make it? Will he make it? And then, when he comes back to life, breathes new life and gives the hug, I'm like, look at this full circle moment. So I think Leota needed to see that to start to believe in the mission. I feel like this entire time she's just doing the mission because it is what her mother offered her to do, because it's not really any other way to say it. Like, she was offered the opportunity and she's like, well, I need money, so sure. Which actually, now that I think about it, is she getting paid? Like, all of it just seems like maybe she's not even getting paid. I don't even know. But she's offered this role, but I think this is the turn that she needs to believe in the mission, because I do think that what they need, what will be their strength kind of going up against the cow, is they all need to believe in what they're doing and also be willing to die. That sounds terrible, but it's true, because you just never know how it's going to go. So I like this scene just because it was a reunion. I loved the nurses and the vet. Like, I think they were hilarious. But then I also was kind of like, And they were like, no, you can't go. You're going to die. I was like, but he kind of most probably will too. Like, he doesn't have any of these skill sets and neither do they. So I kind of was like, they were like, well, you'll need extra hands. And I was thinking, that's not wrong. I mean, like, like you're going to need the extra hands. So I kind of wasn't mad at them volunteering. Vigilante though, my goodness, they've seen us. Like, yeah. Oh, now you're giving them details about my secret identity, and it's like, is he? He just said you were a busboy. Didn't say the restaurant. Didn't say, it's like,
yeah.
I mean, anyone here could be a busboy, so I'm confused about why you think that makes you like this is a red flag for your secret identity. But bless his heart again. He just he doesn't quite understand. He doesn't quite understand, but he is trying his best. So I mean, I guess that's all I could give him. And to be fair, I mean, he did get half blown up this episode, so maybe that's impacting him a little bit more than usual.
I will say too, after this, they're kind of on their way to the cow. I was really sad. I expected it, but really sad that Peacemaker didn't forgive Leota. She's trying to apologize, and he's all just like, I don't even care. Let's just finish this. That kind of broke my heart a little bit. I think they're going to have to work things out in order for them to work together against the cow, hopefully. James, how did you feel about him basically telling her to go screw herself?
Well, I thought it felt authentic in the moment. I felt like it might have been a little bit too pat if you'd been like, oh, I understand you're only doing your job about the diary. No, he's still really pissed off at that. Partly because it's a terrible diary he would never have written, which I think is fueling him slightly. But it is that emotional truth grounding of him feeling betrayed by her, because they were the ones that were getting of anyone on the team, even though he's been creeping closer to everyone apart from Vig, who we already knew. But he's been getting closer to her, and they've been bonding over parental stuff. They've been bonding over just life in general. And I feel like that really felt like a betrayal to him. And it felt authentic that he's upset about that and he's unhappy with her still. I don't know if they're going to completely work it out before the confrontation, but I have a feeling something in the confrontation might help. She might get hurt. Something might happen to her. I don't think she's going to die necessarily. I don't think you hire Danielle Brooks, who's so great, and then kill her. But we'll see. Anyone can die, and we'll discuss it in a minute. But I have a feeling that there's something in the finale might bring them closer. And we'll see, and I'll sort of talk about that. The other thing I wanted to mention was just the hero walk, the slow motion hero walk, and with Eagley as well, with the little guy. He could pop along with them. Now he's doing his thing. He looks very well for an eagle that was basically been punched by a racist, but still. And the only thing I actually paused the scene when they get in the vet. They take the grooming van, which is hilarious, and just of course that would be the vehicle they're taking to the big final confrontation. But I actually paused the shot where they pan across all the pictures of the vets, like clients, all the pet clients and everything like that. And I was trying to think, did James Gunn try and sneak in, I was ready to shed tears if he was going to try and put a picture of Von Spears in there, his late dog, or Ebony the cat. His cat might have been in there, but I think they might have been pictures of, I'd be interested to ask him, or they pictures like crew members' cats and things like that, and dogs and things like that. But I thought maybe he might have snapped that in, but I didn't see it. I looked, but I didn't see it. So
that does feel like a James Gunn thing.
Yeah. So yeah.
That made me sad because he loves that dog so much. You see him always post about him, so that makes me. Oh, James, you're making me sad.
All right.
KB, how did you feel about do you blame him for not forgiving her right away? I guess.
I mean, no, she did blackmail him, so you did frame him, so I think that it's well worth him being upset. And you have to remember, they didn't talk at all this episode. So there, in his mind, is no explanation, for any of this. So because they haven't had a conversation, he just is going off the facts, which is she planted it in his apartment, and that is all he knows right now. Yeah. So it makes sense. But when she starts crying, silently crying, because she does value him as a friend, but she had to know that this was, the only way that this could have been handled, considering the fact that you did set him up though, girl. So what did you expect? You can't expect that. So I actually do agree with James. I'm 100% sure they probably won't work it out before, they get to the cow. One of the reasons is we're watching this in real time. They're headed to the cow right now. So it's kind of I don't think in these moments, logistically that will happen. But I do think that, on this mission to defeating the cow, it will unearth some things and potentially, you know, kind of bring them back together, or at least to a level of understanding, or at least to a conversation, right? Like, because again, they have literally not talked to each other. So I think hopefully it at least brings them to like a conversation where they can start to think like, oh, okay, maybe we will eventually be able to rebuild in the future, but I have to know why you did it. Like maybe it's just as simple as him asking her, why did you do this?
And
he can
doesn't
relate
know about Waller yet. He doesn't know the Waller connection.
Right.
No, he doesn't know anything. So yeah, it's like
when that comes out, he might be like, "Oh, okay." He gets
like,
that.
You're worse than me.
Right. Because he can relate to horrible parents, as we know. So
Yeah,
I'm sure that's where their bonding will be, hopefully. But speaking of like the cow, we got to see the cow. Was this at all what either of you expected to see? Because I was like, what the heck is this thing? It's crazy. It's making weird noises. It's got a weird face. Like, James, what was your reaction to the cow?
I don't know generally what I expected. I when they keep calling it the cow, maybe I was thinking like giant space cow, like an actual cow. But it's just you know, to quote to quote Peter Venkman, disgusting blob. It's just a really weird thing. But in the same way, in some tiny way, I think you feel a little bit of sympathy for it because it feels like it's being mistreated by these butterflies. You know, it's basically a factory farm animal from space. And it is this huge, like, kind of grotesque thing, but I think I don't know if I'm seeing things, but it kind of felt like it had one like little like toothy thing, and it kind of felt like they were trying to give him like a little buck tooth type thing, trying to make it not cute, because I don't think this thing is really cute, but you kind of give it that little bit of empathy for what this creature's going through, and you know they're just using it for its amber and everything like that, and then now they're planning to spirit it off wherever they're going to go, as Harcourt said, one of their other enclaves. So yeah, I don't know what I was expecting with the cow, but I'm not sure I was expecting that.
Yeah, same. KB, was that at all what you pictured?
No, I wanted it to be an actual literal cow. Like that's what I was hoping. Maybe a giant one, but still one. But
Yeah.
Did it remind either of you of Fat Bastard from Austin Powers? Because I literally, that is what I thought of. Like when I saw it, I was like, oh.
Well, now that you say that
was kind of my first
that's
thought.
all I can think about.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay. So definitely not what I was expecting in any capacity. Also confused about like, I just have so many questions. Like seeing it just brings up more questions because I'm like, what can this do actually? Like what you're feeding it, it's getting bigger. What is happening is mostly my question. And I hope that is answered in the finale because apart from just only seeing it as Fat Bastard, I'm really confused about like what the end game is for the cow, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's a lot bigger than the butterflies. Like, I guess I can see butterflies arriving and people not really noticing it. But that giant thing, first of all, how did they get it down there? Because they're so tiny. It's huge. Yeah. Like, listen, again, lots and lots of questions.
You know what? You're right. They're so small, and they also just inhabited, like, human form. Mm-hmm. So, like, also, has this been here the whole time? Did y'all just bring it down right now? Like, I have so many questions.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll find out.
I have a feeling it's been there for a little while because they've got the whole setup already and it's already under the thing. It's in the barn, but I think a wizard did it. That's my answer. And I'm thinking,
a wizard.
Or maybe it was Austin Powers who did it.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Listen, nothing's off the table.
Get in my belly next episode. We'll know it's true. So, yeah.
All right. Favorite moment of the episode, James. I'm sure it involves Eagley.
Do you need me to say it? I mean, honestly, at this point, it's
the hug. Is it the hug?
It's a combo. It's a combo of the hug and his little walk as he's going out the door, because I cannot get enough of that eagle just walking, just doing his little hoppy like, I'm walking. I'm a cool dude. Yeah. But mostly the hug. Yeah.
KB, how about you? What was your favorite part of this episode?
Honestly, Augie dying. Like, I mean, pretty on brand for me because I wanted him to die since the moment I've seen his character. So when it finally happens, I'm like, you know what? Hopefully a weight is lifted off of Peacemaker's shoulders.
Yeah. Okay. That's very fair. To go different, because I probably would have gone with Augie dying. I will say I did love that moment between Harcourt and Leota and just kind of that conversation where, Harcourt kind of realizes like she's going to be the one to lead, and Leota kind of realizes like this is not for her, although something does come around and convince her to come back. But so where do you think, James, this is going? What are we going to see in the finale? Do you have any predictions at all? Someone's going to die, right? We've got to have someone die. It's James Gunn.
I think there's going to be at least one death. I think we're going to lose a team member. I don't know who it's going to be. I don't know who we can sacrifice at this point. I wondered whether Mern was enough of a thing of him saying like, okay, that guy died. We can now have everyone else survive it. I don't know if they're going to be the same when they come out at the other end, and I wonder about that. I wonder if someone's going to get infected with a butterfly at some point. Maybe, I don't know. That's a worry in the back of my head. I have a feeling, based on the pattern that we've had so far, and I know, Tessa, you talked about like Economos maybe dying and everything like that, but based on how he's acted in previous episodes, I think he might save the day again in one moment, because we've seen him help out with Judo Master. We've seen him come out with the chainsaw to kill the gorilla. We saw him this episode arrive with the machine gun to kill all the racist guys. So I think Economos could be there in a pinch. I think they might continue that pattern. I think there's going to be some resolution between Peacemaker and Leota. I think Eagley's going to kick ass, because of course he is. And I wonder if they're going to leave some kind of like dangling plot line for the butterflies to maybe come back, or something of the butterflies to come back, or for there to be something even worse, just lurking, waiting in the wings to, if we do get a season 2. But yeah, I'm worried about these people. After Mern and after everything else that happened, nobody's safe. And much as I love all these characters, I do not want to see anybody die. But if any of them have to die so that Eagley is just absolutely fine still, then I might be okay with it. We'll see.
The thing about Economos there is that he saved the day so much that does that mean...
Do you think a turnaround is coming? You think?
Yeah,
he might sacrifice himself to save everybody, or maybe
that would be maybe his way of. I don't know. It's crazy because I feel like someone has got to die because it's James Gunn. But like you said, did they already kind of tick that off with Mern, right? And I mean, as long as it's not Eagley, right? As long as he's not going to kill Eagley. He already almost killed Eagley.
He's put Eagley under threat already. I don't unless that's a double bluff, but I don't think he's gonna do that. I think he likes Eagley too much, to be honest. That's
true.
I think he's a fan of Eagley almost as much as I am, and that's quite a lot. So yeah, so that's what I predict. I really don't know how it's all going to shake out. It really is weird being in this position where, we got the screeners for all the other episodes, but not the finale, and now I just have absolutely no idea what's going to happen. So I'm ready for anything. I'm excited to see what he does. I honestly believe he's going to stick the landing, as they say. I think it's going to be a good finale, but we'll see. I just don't know at this point, and I'm kind of nervous, but excited.
Yeah, I'm nervous and excited. I think he's going to pull it off. I think the butterfly threat will be resolved, but I think there'll be like an end credit scene of something worse coming, like you said, right? Something else, because he is trying to get a season 2 here ultimately. So you got to leave with a cliffhanger. Plus, he always leaves with cliffhangers. I mean, look at what he did at the end of the Suicide Squad. He set up Peacemaker. So, and it's already been confirmed that there's going to be another spinoff from another character from the Suicide Squad. So maybe it sets that up. Maybe someone shows up from the Suicide Squad. I don't know, KB, do you have any predictions on this finale here?
Well, you guys know I feel like Economos will die. And that is consistent for me.
John.
So, if I had to predict a death, it would 100% be Economos. Apart from that, I anticipate we are gonna, which is fairly obvious, that the cow will be taken down. I think, they will be successful in that. The reunion of some sorts, even if it's just a small one, between Leota and Peacemaker, their friendship rebuilding, at least an olive branch. Yes. I think that also potentially, depending on Harcourt does in this mission, and she is the lead now, that might make a amends with Amanda Waller. Like there might be a conversation with Amanda Waller, how to advance her career, what that looks like. So those are really my predictions.
Interesting.
Well, we'll find out next week, and we'll be back here to talk about it with you guys. So if you haven't already hit the subscribe button, make sure you do that, and the notification bell, because I think we're going to be coming to you next week with we'll see if we're right, if we're wrong, if Eagley lived That's all we care about. I think that's all James cares about. So, but before we go, James, why don't you let everyone know where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me at Jam White on Twitter, at Jammer White Instagram, J Writes on Substack, where I do a lot of writing about pop culture and weekly reviews and things like that, and now mostly Eagley fan fiction. He gets into a lot of fun stuff. And then also empireonline.com, where they don't let me write about Eagley because it isn't in the UK yet. It's not fair. And a few other things, SFX Magazine, a few other places you can find me hanging around, generally spreading my Eagley fan worship in every possible forum.
KB, why don't you let everyone know where to find you?
So I'm on Instagram and Twitter at the Lady KB. You can follow me, my YouTube channel, through the lens of Lady KB, and then just follow me on Twitter. I mean, honestly, that's where I upload every single interview and thing that I'm doing. I will say this week I do have a couple of interviews dropping. One is with the cast and creatives behind The Sky is Everywhere, which is premiering on Apple TV this Friday. And then another is actually for Dollface, which is coming back for season 2 on Hulu. And that's actually also this Friday on February 9th. So both of those interviews are going to be available on Nerdophiles this Friday as well for their premiere dates.
Awesome. And I'm Tessa Smith. You guys can find me everywhere at Mama's Geeky. Here on YouTube, I have my Peacemaker reactions for each episode, so you can check that out. Also at mamasgeeky.com, where I have a review, favorite quotes. No Eagley fan fiction, though. Maybe I should have James come write an article for me about that, because clearly he's the master here. But we'll see you guys next week. And thanks for